My lords, today we are going to address the topic of Cutholoids. These are new, aggressive and dangerous space fauna that have been attacking our science ships and patrol craft. They are most deadly. In this report I shall cover our first contact and study of the creatures. I shall describe how we captured and cloned them and then mutated them, as we now use them as a defensive force in key systems. Let's get into it. Starting with first contact. On October 29th, contact had been lost with the Nomad, an Endurance-class science vessel, while it was investigating a strange asteroid in the Stellaris system. We were detecting weak emergency signals from their last known location, and as such, I dispatched a strike force to investigate further. If we intend to recover the missing science ship, we must act quickly, and after all, they may be in distress and need our help. When our investigating strike force reached the system, we quickly ascertained that the science ship's emergency beacon was coming from inside one of the larger asteroids. Several corvettes moved to circle the asteroid closely, looking for the entrance that the Nomad must have used to get inside, but they found nothing. However, on their second pass, the asteroid woke up. It would seem that this irregularly shaped asteroid appeared to be sentient in nature, and it would turn out to be a space monster, and not an asteroid at all. Fortunately, due to the quick reactions and innate skill of our pilots, they managed to evade the tentacles that came lashing out towards them. Clearly this creature was hostile and dangerous. It had already consumed the Nomad, and thus I ordered the strike force engage the creature. Despite the fact the crew of the Nomad may still be alive inside the beast, at the time, there seemed to be no alternative options. The battle did not last long. The evasiveness and speed of our corvette strike force outmaneuvered the monster, and once it had stopped moving, a great gushing wound oozing purple ichor into the cold of space, its nature would become clear to us. The asteroid served as a shell for the massive organism living inside. Not long after the creature ceased its struggle, the Nomad, under its own power no less, came free, straight from the monster's mouth. At first glance, the ship appeared mostly undamaged, but we would later find out that it was being held inside the creature by an internal set of tentacles. They held it inside and were preparing it for digestion, a rather grisly fate they managed to avoid. Despite the ship being mostly undamaged, the crew appear to have suffered significant psychological trauma, perhaps more than they should, despite the circumstances. We theorized that the creature has some sort of implant, perhaps even psionic, and an effect is placed upon those that are consumed by the creature in order to prevent escape attempts. We expect the Nomad's crew to have significantly shortened lifespans, and we must wonder, are there more of these creatures hidden in asteroids waiting for us across the stars? However, despite the fate of the Nomad's crew, this does represent an important day in the history of the Commonwealth. We've identified a new, previously undiscovered spaceborne organism that shelters inside of asteroids, and we have designated these as Cutholoids. We postulate that these creatures are ambush predators that lie in wait for several years before capturing their prey. It would appear that they are capable of engulfing entire ships, and we should be incredibly careful when approaching unsurveyed asteroid belts, as it seems that this is where they are found, and they are obviously extremely dangerous. The somewhat good news is that these creatures appear to be rather rare, and I'm told that they reproduce asexually, and this process can take several hundred years. Given the space creatures' potential capabilities, I believe we should study them further, and I wonder, could we tame these creatures and use them as some sort of space mine, perhaps? The possibilities are intriguing indeed. I've dispatched more science vessels with the hope of discovering more of these space creatures, but in the meantime, we've been studying the corpse of the Cutholoid that we defeated in the Stellaris system, and from it, my biologists tell me a great deal. It would appear that the shell of the Cutholoid is not mineral alone, but in fact is reinforced with strong biological fibers. These fibers never stop growing, and thus the composition of the shell is estimated to be 50% of the creature's biomass. We believe that when the creature grows too large for its asteroid, it will seek out another home and rebuild and restart the integration process again. This theory was soon observed in real time. The science vessel Bishop managed to witness multiple Cutholoids in orbit of a prime shell candidate. Despite the fact that they generally operate alone and are highly territorial, we witnessed the largest of the creatures make its home in the new fresh asteroid, while the other smaller creatures ordered themselves by size and began to peacefully swap shells with the next in line. In this way, the asteroids that they inhabit have often been occupied by dozens of previous Cutholoids. The end result is that the smallest asteroid has the highest amount of biological reinforcement, as they have been exchanged the most often. The shell samples are likely to contain significant scientific value, should we wish to acquire more. Clearly, this behaviour is remarkable indeed, and in fact, I'm told by my team of researchers that it is very similar to a creature called a hermit crab from old Earth. A slight diversion, but these amusing little creatures also form lines and swap shells with one another. The largest crab enters its new home, the next crab in line takes the vacated shell, leaving an open shell for the crab behind him, and the shell swapping will continue down the line until everybody has upgraded. A wonderful example of convergent evolution, or perhaps these Cutholoids are somewhat related to the lowly hermit crab. Quite wonderful indeed. But back to the Cutholoids. It has been decided that we must try to capture one of these Cutholoids alive, and so we developed a device called a void lure. This device will transmit signals into deep space that are tuned to attract specific types of space fauna over time. Each installation must be built in the preferred system type for the creature. Cutholoids like asteroids, so we added one to a starbase installation. The hope is that the lured creatures will be rendered temporarily docile for 1 year. Alongside this technology, we also developed a device called a gravity snare. This is a non-lethal projectile that is designed to safely capture and transport space fauna for study and dissection, allowing us to either store them in our giant vivarium for study or harvest them for genetic material. Furthermore, we can breed them if we wish and potentially clone them later down the line. The plan to capture one went off without a hitch. The lure attracted a lone Cutholoid, and using a gravity snare fired from a nearby cloaked science ship, we captured the creature and brought it back to our vivarium for study. We quickly determined that this creature was 155 years old, quite remarkable for a spacefaring beast. After all, it's dangerous out there. We have named it, aptly I think, Merc Grip, and remarkably, within only 8 months, Merc Grip gave birth to a little baby Cutholoid. Truly, it was a wonderful day. We now have 2. Mother and baby are thriving under our care, and the child has been named Gloomtooth. We continue to breed the creatures for several years. They reproduce asexually, so there is in reality very little that we have to do in order to grow more. We simply keep the beasts well fed and take care of them. After several decades, we felt that we had enough to begin a small cull in the hope to generate some rare genetic samples. These samples would later allow us to clone and mutate the Cutholoids, allowing us to genetically manipulate their genome, tweaking their offensive and defensive capabilities. And we ended up doing just that. If you can imagine it, we managed to breed a small fleet of Cutholoids equipped with jump drive technologies and even cloaking tech. Although they cost a significant amount of mineral to produce, we hope they'll be worth the investment, and we need to test them in combat soon. A final note to touch on is how to defeat them. Cutholoids have a thick armoured shell in the asteroid around them, but once you break through this, they are relatively weak. Bypass weapons, such as disruptors, would be perfect, but if these are not available to you, I would suggest plasma or other energy-based weaponry, anything that will burn through armour and hull efficiently. Even mining lasers would be particularly good against them. And that concludes what we know about the Cutholoids. If you want to learn about more space fauna, namely the voidworms and the voidworm plague, then I suggest you click the video on screen now.